Do not enter reads the note on the entrance of the Church of Jesus, the Temple of the Tabernacle of the Testimony in Daegu, South Korea. The streets of the nation's fourth largest city have been all but abandoned after what authorities describe as a super-spreading event of the coronavirus at the church. The city's mayor told residents to stay indoors after 90 people who worshipped at the church showed symptoms of infection and dozens of new cases were confirmed. The church had been attended by a 61-year-old woman who tested positive, known as Patient 31. 23 cases of South Korea's newly diagnosed 31 cases on Thursday were linked to the church, which has since shut the Daegu branch and called for other branches to hold their services online or at home. Korea's Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the coronavirus epidemic is an unprecedented crisis. South Korea now has 104 confirmed cases and has reported its first death. International authorities are trying to prevent the outbreak from spreading into a global pandemic. Japan on Thursday reported that 2 elderly people from a cruise ship moored near Tokyo had died of the virus. Chinese officials have been pointing to evidence that new cases were declining as proof they are succeeding in keeping the virus largely contained. But changes in methodology for reporting infections has created new doubt about data. On Thursday, the World Health Organization chief said he was encouraged by the downward trend in coronavirus diagnoses in China.
Roger Stone will be getting prison time. He will be getting 40 months in prison. That's what the judge handed down. That pans out to a little bit more than 3 years. Also 24 months of probation. It looks like on each count they're still going down. But
also, President Trump today fired another senior official who played a role in the Ukraine scandal. Another official who raised objections to the president withholding military aid to Ukraine. His name is John Rood, R-O-O-D. He's the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. As President Trump was pressuring Ukraine to announce investigations into Joe Biden, withholding U.S. military aid to Ukraine as leverage until they did so, John Rood reportedly advised contemporaneously that was a bad idea, that would be dangerous to U.S. interests. CNN has published quotes from an email they say Rood sent at the time to the defense secretary, an email saying that the president holding up that military aid to Ukraine would, quote, undermine our defense priorities with a key partner in the strategic competition with Russia. In addition to expressing that objection, John Rood is also the Pentagon official who officially certified that Ukraine had met all of its anti-corruption benchmarks for receiving U.S. military aid, which, of course, gave lie to the White House defense that President Trump was just being an anti-corruption watchdog. You know how he does it when he withheld that military aid. But now that senior Pentagon official, John Rood, has been fired. He made his resignation letter public today, so there can be no ambiguity about it. It says right there at the top of his resignation letter that the president demanded his resignation. So we know that.
Back to the Democratic debate. Michael Bloomberg facing attacks from all sides in his big debut. Look at the New York Post, summing it all up with this cover, Black and Bloom. Dan Henninger, of course, is the Wall Street Journal's editorial page deputy editor, Fox News contributor. Good morning to you.
Good to be with you, Ed.
That Post sums it up. I noticed that from the left, the Huffington Post said Bloomberg terminal, making fun of the machines by suggesting his political health is now terminal. The Bloomberg stock is down, but is he out?
No, he's far from out, Ed. I mean, they had to attack him because he's been blanketing the country with all of these ads. He has now spent over $300 million. And, you know, in some of the state polls, like in Oklahoma, he's in the lead. I mean, all of a sudden, he's risen in the polls just on the basis of this.
States like that.
Yeah, exactly. So they had to go after Mike Bloomberg because he just has more firepower out there than any of the rest of them did. But, as a friend of mine said last night in that debate, Mike Bloomberg, unfortunately, brought a wallet to a knife fight.
That's a good way to put it. And I think, though, we finally had the battle joined about socialism versus capitalism. And in the second hour, Bloomberg sort of warmed up. Maybe he was getting the rust off and went after Bernie Sanders. Let's listen to that.
Best known socialist in the country happens to be a millionaire with 3 houses. What did I miss here?
Well,
you'll miss that I work in Washington, House 1.
That's the first problem.
Live in Burlington, House 2.
That's good.
And like thousands of other Vermonters, I do have a summer camp. Forgive me for that.
It's like the first hour, Bloomberg seemed lost. He seemed nervous. Maybe this is the fact that, you know, these folks who like to skip the first few contests, they're not in midseason form. But in the second hour, he took it directly to Sanders.
He did take it directly to Sanders. And I have to say, I know all the focus rightly is on Mike Bloomberg's performance. Wasn't that great. But I got to tell you, Ed, I think some real Sanders vulnerabilities were opened up in that debate. Well, basically three. Mike Bloomberg cited the fact that capitalism isn't going away in this country, made Bernie frankly say, I am a democratic socialist, flat out. The other two things, though, were Pete Buttigieg pointing out that in his health care plan, that came up with the unions, the culinary workers, he said, Bernie, there is a $25 trillion hole in paying for your health care plan. And Bernie had no real good answer to that. And every union person out there watching who has a good health care plan has got to be thinking about that. Bernie's saying, we're going to have a health care system like Canada's or the United Kingdom's. Secondly, Bernie was asked right out by one of the moderators, would you ban fracking? What would you say to all those workers in places like Pennsylvania, West Virginia, they're going to lose their jobs? And Bernie said, we are going to ban fracking, and they're just basically going to have to get over it because we have to save the planet for their children.
The future is now. Deal with the planet, and if they lose their jobs. Oh,
man, how is that going to play with those people that have jobs related to the energy industry?
Didn't it sound like Hillary Clinton in 2016 with coal miners and all the rest?
We're not going to throw out capitalism. We tried that. Other countries tried that. It was called communism, and it just didn't work.
Let's talk about democratic socialism, not communism, Mr. Bloomberg. That's a cheap shot.
A major data breach at MGM resorts. The personal information of more than 10 million people has reportedly been compromised, including names, numbers, and addresses.
Your turn, Anthony.
Okay, first on CBS this morning, we are revealing the new Time magazine cover. And while the magazine's had many iconic covers, Gayle King has been on them, this is a first. Despite appearances, this is not a photograph of Martin Luther King Jr. It is a new image created using virtual reality. An actor stood in for Dr. King, and then a visual effects team rendered that shot. It is part of a new project called The March, which will give people a chance to experience 1963's March on Washington as if they were there. It was made in collaboration with the DuSable Museum of African American History in Chicago. I'm going to be there next week ahead of the exhibit's opening to talk with Viola Davis and her husband, Julius Tenen. They're the co-executive producers of the project. I am so excited to see this.
That's so great.
Yeah, they say this is the most realistic digital rendering of a human ever created.
In today's Tech Bites, Nissan joins the car subscription world.
Nissan Switch is up and running in Houston. It offers 2 tiers, Select and Premium. But unlike other subscription plans, Nissan allows users unlimited switches. Customers can get a new car every day. And Staples is getting into podcasting.
The office supply company is opening podcast studios in 6 Boston area stores. Staples says an hour-long recording session will cost $60. That includes assistance from an in-store specialist in case there are any problems. And a Silicon Valley icon responsible for making our work lives easier has died.
Computer scientist Larry Tesler spent his career focused on making computer systems more user-friendly. He's best known for creating the keyboard's cut, copy, and paste commands that we all use every day.
And we do appreciate his contribution.
Welcome back. Finding practical applications for modern technologies like AI, blockchain, and augmented reality could change our lives. In Dubai, a citywide initiative seeks to embed these technologies across government services to improve customer experience in everything from paying bills to healthcare.
Hello, Dr. Yasser here with you. Okay, I'm getting the ECG of the patient right now. The patient's a 45-year-old male, right? What's his complaint?
Dr. Yasser Saif is sitting in his office in Dubai. Using virtual and augmented reality technology, he's able to view a patient's data in real time and provide initial diagnosis in an ambulance several miles away.
The VR is where we are virtually as if present in the ambulance with the patient. So there's a VR. AR is where we ask for the vitals and we can see the vitals on the screen, the blood pressure, the heart rate, the ECG, the oxygen saturation, and hopefully in the future, when the paramedics auscultate the patient, we can even hear that. We can hear what's going on in the patient's chest.
Adaptation of VR and AR technology for use in ambulances is the idea of a Dubai government entity, NIDA. It's a government agency charged with providing technology solutions to improve people's lives across Dubai. Last year, NIDA deployed technology that could speed up a patient's diagnosis and save valuable time in preparing for the patient's treatment at the hospital. This smart ambulance uses VR and AR with a 360-degree camera, body cameras, advanced bio-vital sensors, and a stethoscope enabled by the Internet of Things.
More than 70% of our cases have been treated on scene, actually. So by this, we are making sure that we're giving the right diagnosis, the right treatment to the patients between emergency physician and doctors in ER.
In a medical emergency, every second counts. And it's hoped that when this technology is rolled out in a fleet of smart ambulances in Dubai later this year, it will bring benefits to both patients and hospitals.